just as I guess a point of clarification, on the beginning of that story, you talked about how you've been trying to sit down with the sheriff for a while, and
Yeah.
been denied. Their new communications person says, "Oh, I can do it," after being on the job, couldn't
2
be more
weeks.
than a couple weeks
2
now.
weeks, yeah.
And then when you get there, what happened?
Yeah, so we walked into the sheriff's office, obviously said we were there to see their public information officer. We get checked in, and right when we're like, okay, what room are we going to? Said, oh, the sheriff's actually here. We're going to go talk to him and sit down in his office. So we were not aware that we were going to be talking with Sheriff Williams until we stepped into the sheriff's office. We've been asking for months to speak with him ever since this investigation with the GBI opened up that involved him teaching those classes with Gary Jenkins. So we've been denied. They had no interest. Their main defense with all of that was they put a video out on Facebook when all the questions were swirling around, and they said, we've answered all the questions, so we're not going to do an interview about any of this. And then obviously the date didn't line up from the story. The 29th phone records show that he wasn't even in Burke County at the time of the class. From I think it was 9 a.m. to noon. He was in Grovetown, and then the 30th would have been the only other day, according to the phone records that we have.
Right, and then the whole thing with that was he, I guess, went to fill out the paperwork later, forgot the exact date.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks later. I believe that they have 30 days to enter those classes into the computer system. The problem was that it was on February 9th. He said that Gary Jenkins had been asking him multiple times to fill out the paperwork and to put in those classes so he could get credit for it and meet his quota. And when Sheriff Williams went to go put that into the computer, he said he couldn't remember the date, so he put it down as the 29th. Obviously, a lot of people asking questions about how you don't remember a date of a training, but that's just what he had put down. And then we, of course, obviously tried to check that. I even asked for, since it happened at the Burke County Sheriff's Office, I even requested surveillance video of the Sheriff's Office, but didn't go back that far. And they recycle the footage. So
yeah, probably every month or two or something like that. So we had kind of gotten that background in the first two stories of this. A newer part here is the auto body shop or whatever. So kind of tell us again. Now it's run by this guy Mobley.
Daniel Cates is actually the one who runs the shop, from my understanding, and they were a part of an illegal gambling operation. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in that. They got prosecuted in federal court for that, for funneling money through Cates Firestone. I believe it was $250,000, if I'm correct on that. That was funneled through that. So that all went to court. I got some information that Alfonzo may have been in court for all of that happening. We requested federal court documents. Obviously, as you saw in the story, Alfonzo had a two and a half page character witness for actually Mobley in the case, not for Cates. And then you saw that both families were big campaign donors for him for sheriff. So I talked to some people in the federal courthouse, some of the prosecutors. They said it was kind of strange to see that happen and to see that unfold. So it just raised more questions.
Yeah, and where is Cates?
Firestone, yeah, it is actually right downtown in Waynesboro.
Okay,
I believe it's on 6th Street as well.
Okay,
so.
yeah, okay. So at least it was in Burke County, not
Yep.
going to an outside area. But yeah, I think that's the part that's the most interesting now, is you've kind of got these new characters coming into it with kind of an anti-law enforcement past, if you will, felons, and teaming up with the biggest law enforcement in the county kind of raises some suspicions.
Absolutely. That's what the county was telling me, is that they're just not understanding what the reasoning behind that is. There's I do know that there is video of Sheriff Williams going in front of the commission, I think in 21, before that he had switched over, saying that the sheriff's office was spending a lot of money with the county repair shop, and he could save the county a lot of money if they had just switched to Cates Firestone or another one, but it was a no-bid contract to Cates Firestone. The county told me repeatedly that they're paying double for labor, a markup on parts, because that's just how auto shops work,
Right.
and they still have the option to go to the county shop, but they're not using it at all. And they've told me that they've made it a priority to work on the sheriff's patrol cars, but they've still decided, because he believes that they can save money, to go over to Kate's Firestone.
So what you're saying is the prices at Kate's are higher than at the county auto body shop.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then did he have anything to say? And I know we'll hear the full interview. Did he have anything to say about working alongside Kate's and Mobley?
Didn't even get that far in the interview. You saw, obviously, from that story, you'll see it in the full interview. Things get kind of testy when I start asking questions. We originally went in there to sit down about budgetary issues and his spending. Obviously, the $53K goes along with his budget and his spending, because that money would then again, if it was reported, it would go into his budget and be spent on law enforcement needs with his agency. So we started asking questions about that. I think it was 2 times during the interview I asked him where that money was, couldn't get an answer. He knew where the money was the whole time. And then the 3rd time you saw in the story is where things started going south, and he told me that it was never missing, but never alluded to any documents, any paperwork that showed that, which was concerning to me, to say the least. But
yeah. It seems like a lot of face value, taking his word for it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and then when you fit the question in with the GBI, that was near the end of the interview. We started talking about various things with the 53K, and then I asked him if I could ask him a separate question aside from the budget and spending, and he said he didn't want to answer any more questions, so I kind of forced the GBI question, because we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk to him about that and get an answer for the community and for transparency purposes, and he didn't want to answer that question. Mm-hmm. And at that point he said, if you don't have any more questions, then the interview's over. So then you say, okay.
Yeah. So let's go back to the 53K. So this is just things that have been recovered over the years from investigations, or whatever.
These things go all the way back 26 years under Sheriff Corsi's tenure as sheriff. As you saw on that sheet from December 2016, he signed over, because those are unresolved court cases that go through the DA's office that are still being prosecuted, and at a certain point they get really old, and then the judge is like, okay, well, we're gonna move on from these and just let the sheriff's office decide what to do with it. Actually, interesting story. That is another very highly, it's a very talked about topic, confiscated assets in Georgia, and how those are handled properly with law enforcement, and whether they're always submitted to the state. Mm-hmm. So whether that happens all the time is another question.
One thing that was kind of a sticking point for me, maybe I was just kind of misunderstanding, or maybe other people had this same question, when it came to that 53K and bringing it to the bank and looking at the exact denominations. When you talk, and we had talked about this during the piece, so I understand a little better now, but the point we're trying to make there is the 53K got brought to the bank, right? That's the quote-unquote missing money. Yeah. But when you look at how, it's $538
$100 bills, yeah.
Yeah, $100 bills. That doesn't match up. There weren't $538 $100 bills sitting on that bank counter.
From what we understand, there was a very specific dollar amount in bags in the Burke County safe over that 26 years, and we have county emails that state from that person who signed off on the sheet with Alfonzo that was a very specific dollar amount that was in the safe. And then, of course, when those questions started being raised, that money showed up 6 years later at the bank. It was deposited by the surveillance photos that you saw. Yeah, but those denominations, from what we understand, that money was not the exact same money that was in those bags in the safe.
Right, and that again raises the question: where was the money?
Or what was it used on? Where was that money? When did it leave? Where was it at the whole time? We asked those questions throughout the interview, couldn't get an answer, and then he eventually told us that it was in the safe the whole time. But again.
And remind us where this fits in the timeline of you start the investigation, then when does the money appear at the bank?
I believe that from when the county started asking questions, or us.
Either way.
From when the county started asking questions, I believe it was a week after, I believe. I think it was November 1st. So yeah, I think it was a week later the money showed up after the county started asking where was this money.
As it tends to do when people start asking questions. The questions came, and then the money gets deposited, and then you guys kind of come in and start the I-team investigation.
Yes, because it definitely threw up some red flags for the county. They said usually when this, they even told me they've had similar cases in the past where they've had people that have taken money or misplaced money, and they started asking questions, and then things don't line up like they're supposed to. It throws red flags, and then usually audits get done at that point and reveal a lot about where that money went, which we've seen 2 different audits done on the sheriff's office with his credit cards and his spending, in grant spending as well, that we uncovered back in October. So that was right before all of this had happened. So those audits came out, I think, a little bit before, early in the month of October, and then, a few weeks later, the 53K comes into question. So a lot of money questions going on with the sheriff's office.
Do we know what came out of that audit? Is there anything on that?
From what I'm told from the county right now is that I think there was another audit that was done. I may be mistaken about that, and they're not willing to release information on what's going on right now. But for the audits that we covered, there's been no updates with that.
Okay. So, this is probably far from over, but without giving away too much, I know you can't talk about everything. Can you give us an idea of what comes next, what the next step is in all of this?
I mean, the next step is just going to be following what the GBI does. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is they still got a 5-month investigation, an ongoing investigation right now into the sheriff's office. So it's really going to be about what they do next and see where we go from here. I mean, it's in their hands. It's been in their hands. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens.